So first off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to PlantRight Net Workshop. So this is actually, thanks Robert. It's actually 15 years ago we started this event. So show of hands, who was at the very first Net Workshop 15 years ago?
Wow.
Yeah, Hunter, you were in 6th grade.
Y'all still
Awesome. So those of you that, this is their very first Net Workshop event. That's more common, all right. So, first off, I'd like to introduce myself. So my name is Tori Swope. I was a punk, I guess kind of a punk-ass kid when I started this event, but the idea behind the event was, in the landscape distribution business, a lot of times we felt kind of caught in between a lot of different stakeholders in our industry. Whether it was a municipality, somebody with the city that was like, hey, this is what we want. Landscape architect is saying, hey, no, this is what we want. Landscape contractor saying, oh no, this is what we want. And all of a sudden it dawned on me one day, I'm like, man, aren't we all on the same team here? You know, ultimately, when I think about what team we're on team landscape, right? Whether we like it or not, Joe Public is out there every day driving along, judging our profession, our work. What do the landscapes of Kansas City or Lawrence or wherever you come from look like day in, day out? And the more that we can collaborate as professionals, as municipal folks, designers, architects, contractors, and even maintainers of landscapes, the more we're going to be successful, in my opinion. Same thing, the more we can gain education around new ideas, I think the better off we're going to be. So I was thinking on my drive over here, man, what impact has this event made? And it dawned on me that the very first speaker that or one of the first speakers we had at this event was Dr. Jason Griffin, and he'd done his doctoral thesis on green giant arborvitae. And at this talk 15 years ago, almost nobody in Kansas City knew about green giant arborvitae, believe it or not. It's been our #1 selling tree at CAT now for, I think, 5 years in a row. Right? At that time, we were selling a cajillion white pine. It becomes our highest selling item. We had, in one of those early talks, Dr. Chuck Dixon talk about soil microbes. We had Dr. Bertrand, maybe, from Quebec come down and talk about mycorrhiza early on. We had breeder from France, I can't remember his name. We introduced drift roses at this event. Nobody had ever heard of drift roses until this event, and then they went white hot and exploded. Not just, and I think Kansas City, I don't know that it was ground zero, but I know that many places started carrying drift roses after we launched it at this event. So very proud. I know that many people have been introduced at this event, so this is something I say every time. Please, over the break, make sure that you meet somebody that you don't know, particularly across the aisle. Oh, and Doherty, I forgot to mention arborists. Of course, arborists are super important part of our community also, right? So we try to very intentionally invite a cross section of our industry so folks can meet on even ground. And then again, we work very hard to bring people in on the cutting edge from whether it's soils, genetics in plants, ideas around plants. We've done a lot on root systems, different things to create awareness around information within our industry. Obviously, we also have CEUs here for people to sign up for. I normally also thank the people that put the event together. Beth Kay, where you at? So we got a new Beth that did this event. The old Beth did it for a long time. She's retired now. She actually had a bad accident. It's kind of a sad story, but But we got Beth Cornegay, who, thank you, Beth. You did a great job. And so anyway, that's kind of the story. So Dr. Stark is going to talk about soil here, and again, we try really hard not to promote in this talk, but at the same time, I don't want to just bring people in that I don't know anything about. So this product, or a lot of the concepts within what he's going to share with you, this is a product that we really believe in. I'm a huge believer in the biology that's going on in the soil. We've made a massive commitment, kind of my whole career, to soil health. So pretty excited about Dr. Stark. And here you go, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm Dave Stark. I have a doctorate in molecular biology, so I'm not going to go into why on earth would you spend all that time in school to get a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry, whatever. I've spent my career applying that, though, in agriculture. So my whole first career was with one of the really large ag companies, the Global and all that. And when I retired, a friend of mine that retired just before me started this new business incubator for companies that wanted to get into agriculture. And Holganix was the first one that applied and got accepted. And when you do this as kind of a startup in a new industry, they give you a little money, but mostly they give you mentors. So I was a mentor to Holganix. And when I asked my friend Jeff, I said, so what's Holganix do? And he said, well, they do microbes. And I couldn't, out of my mouth is no, I'm not going to do it. Because microbes, in my experience in agriculture, the company I worked for, and I was a pretty high-level executive, who spent $300 million investing in a microbe company. And their best products that we would issue press releases on, I kid you not, you needed a statistician to tell the corn grower he really got more yield. They were so underwhelming. But Jeff's my friend, our daughters were friends, so I did it. And what I found is what Tori already knew, that because you said you've invested your career in soil health, agriculture hadn't been doing that. We didn't know what soil health was and how important the biology in the soil was. So when I started really digging into why this product is different from what everyone else is doing, it's because of the diversity of biology. So there's a couple main messages. I have a lot of information here I'm going to gloss over and stuff. We're going to talk about microbes. I know that when I talk to farmers, they are bombarded constantly. It's unbelievable how many new products, how many companies and people are out there trying to take the dollars out of their pocket. And so they're very careful. So what I want you to understand, when people are bombarding you with new product ideas for soil health, and they start talking about microbes, what to look for, what's important. Because some microbes are really good, and some are, like I thought, snake oil. Or if you're like some of the guys I work with in Minnesota, and I don't mean to be indelicate, they don't call it snake oil, they call it weasel piss. So that's not what this is. So you can help find the difference when people start telling you, why do microbes matter and what do you look for? So we're going to do an overview of what the different microbe types are. Again, I'm going to tell you, why they do what they do in pictures more than lots of words. And then, some of the benefits. But really, if you think about the really good soil on top there versus the stuff on the bottom, how do we build that stuff on top? Well, that's an interaction between mostly plant roots and microbes. Because in a healthy soil, the plant's going to invest 30% of all its energy. 30% is a huge investment. Think about your own portfolio. You're going to spend 30% on one investment? Probably not. The plant does it to attract microbes. And the microbes, in turn, are able to find nutrients in the soil the plant root can't access. They're in a chemical form the plant root will never be able to take up, but the microbe can. So they feed each other. And they work together, and they make fertilizer work a lot better, and they build soil structure. But how do we get to this stuff on the bottom? So I lived the last 35 years in Missouri. Now I moved to Indiana, so I know there's guys here from Indianapolis. I live in Fort Wayne. This was my soil in Fort Wayne when I moved into this house. When we overfeed a plant, so there's a lot of things that we can do with erosion and abusing soil, but one of the things in agriculture is, guys, if they think it's 200 pounds an acre of nitrogen to get this much corn, I'm going to put on 250. When you overfeed the soil, it's this biochemistry. The plant senses, I got enough nutrition, I don't need to make that 30% investment anymore. So I'm not going to feed the microbes. So what do the microbes do? They don't just die. They eat all the good stuff in the soil. So through time, the organic matter gets lower and lower. The ground gets harder and harder. It's like asphalt when it rains, it just washes off. You can't get a shovel in it. And all it is basically solid support for a really poorly, shallowly rooted plant. So that's how we destroy soil. You need roots and you need microbes. So I keep talking about microbes. These are, generally speaking, the different classes of microbes. They're called microbes because they're microscopic. You can't see them. You need a microscope. At the top are the most numerous, the fastest to grow, and the smallest, the bacteria, going all the way down to the least abundant, the largest physically, like the protozoa and nematodes. All are important. You need all of them. So many microbial products that are out there are one or two bacteria, or maybe a bacteria and a fungus. But if we go back and we look at that healthy soil on top, in a teaspoon, there will be thousands of species. Not one or two, and over 1 billion individuals. They're all there for a reason. So, let's talk about why. So, bacteria are the workhorses. So they are phenomenal at breaking down organic matter, whether that's compost, manure, grass clippings, dead roots, dead insects. They even eat the fertilizer that you put down. And that's a good thing. Because remember, all the soil microbes live within half an inch of a root. And then I know in an agriculture setting, and I'll show you data later, less than half the fertilizer people are spending their money on actually goes to the crop. It's real inefficient. It gets wasted in the environment. But the microbes, when they're there, can consume it, and they keep it in the root zone. They also, and you're going to see this through this talk, scientists love to do this. It drives me nuts. They love to come up with terms when they can't just say what they mean. Mineralize. What does that mean? It just means it breaks it down. It's breaking down the grass clippings, the organic matter that's on and in the dirt, and turning it into the basic chemical elements, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, etc., the plant root can take up that needs to grow. So bacteria are great at that. Another thing they do that's really important is because, remember, they live next to a root, and the root should be feeding them in exchange for what the bacteria do in return. They secrete hormones that tells the plant, make more roots. And of course, if you're planting anything or growing anything, you know the feet under the ground are more important than what's on top in terms of the survivability, its ability to handle stress and such. So there are bacteria and fungi that induce rooting. So bacteria are really important, but there's a problem we'll talk about in a minute if you only have bacteria. So, like I said, I'm a scientist. I spent 35 years in the show me state. So you got to show me. Are these just talking points, or does this stuff really happen? So I use pictures in agriculture. That's fallow corn syndrome. That's low phosphorus. I bet if you did a soil test and you looked at the total phosphorus pool, not available, the total pool, there'd be enough there for decades, literally. But this plant doesn't have enough phosphorus. It could be because either the fertilizer that was put down in the available pool washed off or whatever, or there's no microbes to liberate it, because microbes unlock soil phosphorus for the plant. Here on the right, yellow corn syndrome is low nitrogen. You see that in a lot of things. They turn yellow when there's not enough nitrogen. And unless the guy put down a lot of ammonia in the fall, which I don't know why they do that. Well, I know why, because they try to save time in the spring, and it's just gone. What this could be caused by is there's too many bacteria. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. Why you need not just bacteria, but fungi, protozoa, etc. Because they all work together to cycle the nutrients. And if they're out of whack, like here, no bacteria or fungi to solubilize phosphorus, too many that tie it up, then we've got these problems. Now, fungi are amazing. This is what most of the biological products that people will sell you lack. I don't think I've seen any other competitive products that have more than 1 or 2 fungi. Soils tend to have enough bacteria. It's the fungi they're lacking, and the fungi are critical. They also are amazing at degrading organic matter. There are some fungi like trichoderma, which you could buy as an organic disease control agent. They don't really do the mineralization and all break down organic matter. They just live alongside the outside of a plant root and they eat other microbes. A lot of those microbes are the soil-borne diseases, so they help control pathogens. This is a fungus I bet you all know. They're mycorrhizae, and you mentioned earlier. Mycorrhizae are amazing. It's the little white feathery stuff in between the roots. So the mycorrhizae, because they're so much smaller than even the little root hair, they increase the effective surface area 100 to 1,000-fold because they can get in between soil particles the root can't. They're really good at finding water and really good at unlocking phosphorus. Another thing that is really cool is mycorrhizae in a field or an orchard or a lawn, they form a network. And they talk to each other, not with words, but through biochemistry. So when a disease comes in or a stress comes in into one part, it sends a signal that tells the rest of the network, turn up your defense response. So it's like it's like the internet of the underground. And so again, how do we know fungi break down organic matter? Now, some of you probably recognize this. It's fairy ring. It's a fungal disease. Of course, I'm not saying put fairy ring out on people's lawns. But you can see as the fungus spreads out in the circle, the dark green, well, that's because the fungi is breaking down the grass clippings, the debris on the top and the dead roots and such, and it's releasing the nitrogen. So we can see fungi work. They do what they're supposed to. Now, this is one you've probably never heard of, and I can't think of anybody that will sell protozoa, amoeba. They're a lot larger than bacteria. You'll see one there in the middle. The bacteria are the little black dots in there, and they eat these things like crazy. I told you bacteria can tie up nitrogen. They have a really high nitrogen requirement. They need 1 nitrogen for every 3 carbons, if that means anything to you. That's really high protein, but that's toxic to fungi and protozoa. So as the bacteria grow on the organic matter that you put out there, the fertilizer you spend money on, and they start to divide, the fungi and the protozoa, the way God designed it is, that's toxic, so they have to spit it out. And they spit it out in the form of ammonia and nitrate. What forms of nitrogen do your plant root take up the most? Ammonia nitrate. So we complete the cycle. So having all of them together is, again, so important, and that's the message. You want plant health, soil health, diversity. Don't buy 1 or 2 strains of a microbe. And again, we see evidence, like here, the Olympia National Forest, no one fertilizes it, no one takes care of it. The biomass is amazing because the soil and the plants and the microbes are working together to cycle nutrients. So I get asked all the time by farmers in particular, so if I use your product once, do I have to use it again? And not just our products, I don't mean to just, a microbial, because there's other diverse products out there. Do I have to use my microbial time and time again? And the answer is, yeah, you do. Through time, as the soil quality gets better, you can back off the number of times you apply, the rates, but things happen. You know, one of the things that a farmer does is every time you turn the soil and you till it, you get a big burst of oxygen into the ground. And that's bad because the bacteria love the oxygen and they can grow fast. A bacteria in ideal conditions can divide in 20 minutes. So they can explode. So they whack the bacteria and fungi ratio out of what it should be. Mycorrhizal fungi, that whole network, gets destroyed when you till. But there's things that we do that happen that we have no control over. Flooding. So 48 hours underwater, the oxygen is too low in the soil. All the beneficial bacteria, fungi, protozoa have to have oxygen. And if they don't, they're going to stop growing or they're going to die. And you can tell, I mean, we've had enough flooding in Missouri, you guys probably know. You see the river or the lake that's flooded, when it drains, what's it smell like? Death. That's bad. Because what has happened is the microbes there have gone what's called anaerobic. Some bacteria don't need oxygen. That's how we get beer and wine, so they're not all bad. But in the soil, it is bad. So that smell tells you the biology is way out of whack and it needs to be restored. Otherwise, it will come back, but it will take months. Another thing that happens is freezing, because all these microbes are full of water and ice crystals will burst them. So yeah, the microbes can go away because of what nature does. So again, remember, diversity is the key. So this is a product, you know, that Tori talked about. It has over 800 species, bacteria, protozoa, fungi, over 200 species of fungi, everything, the biome that you need in one product. They all grow together, they're cooperative. So it's an example of a diverse product that you would use for plant health, soil health. So again, I'd like to see, so what's the proof? One of the big benefits is faster establishment. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and this is Muirfield Village Golf Club. It's Jack Nicklaus's home course. It's in Dublin, Ohio. It's not where I grew up. It's pretty high end. This is August, and this is a month before 6 weeks before the President's Cup. And look what they did to a fairway and tee box. 6 weeks before an internationally televised golf event. So the superintendent there had been playing with our product, and you can see a month later the heel in. And in his greenhouse, he was growing his own plantings. Those two plants are the same age. The only difference is microbes, or no microbes. Look at the difference in root mass, the size of the plant. It's getting more nutrients. So yeah, it's going to do better. So I keep talking about roots and how important roots are. And there's so much science around this. If you think about plant roots, you know, I read a study the other day, less than 1% of soil that's available in the root zone actually gets explored by a plant root. Less than 1%. And a lot of the nutrients have to be close to the root for it to be taken up. So you need proximity. So having more roots helps. So this is from a farmer around West Lafayette, close to Purdue University. Look at the difference in the root mass. And you can tell which ear of corn has more kernel on it, which one yielded more, because the plant had more access to more nutrients. And again, mycorrhizae really help with that too. I was talking to a farmer in California the other day, and I've got this on the slide, I've got a picture of his. And he said he's got neighbors, and he grows tree nuts, almonds, or if you're out in California, they're almonds. They don't say that all. It took me a minute to pick that up after talking with them. And walnuts and such. He said his guys are putting $300 to $400 an acre of compost in their orchard, trying to increase the organic matter, and all they did was get the fluff on top. And when you harvest nuts, you want the ground to be hard. So he said, you know, and they're not doing anything under the surface to the organic matter, but I have more roots, my organic matter is going up. Roots are the main contributor to soil organic matter. It's not the stuff we leave on top of the ground. And again, I've got a study on this. I'll show you a quick slide in a minute. But of course, better roots, transplant survivability, stress response, nutrient efficiency. So roots are really, really key. This is a nursery in New York State. And all these trees were planted the same size, same age, about a few months before this picture, bare root planted. The only difference is the microbes were put in the middle row. And so which tree is going to survive better and thrive? It's pretty easy. This is Nathan's picture in California. He was adding new trees to his orchard, and just the difference in growth, if you can see, I know there's a lot of green in there from the tree and not. This is a guy in Georgia who planted 205 peach trees. And he goes on and on about how his trees are larger than his neighbors. I don't know, and maybe Chris, if you remember, if he had any that didn't survive. He never mentioned it. I think he had really good survival rate. This is from a greenhouse operator in New York. All of these, by the way, are customer pictures. I wasn't at any of these sites. I know they weren't staged by anyone at my company. They just send the pictures in. And you can see the difference. And what the greenhouse operator said, using the microbes, he could reduce its nitrogen 10% and its fungicide 30%. And the plant stayed looking like this longer. It makes sense, the plant's healthier. Now, these are pictures I admit I did take. So, when I moved into my house in Fort Wayne in July, I don't know why they do this in Indiana. There are ponds everywhere. And they charge you a huge amount to have a lot next to this basically surface retention pond they probably have to put in by law. So I got the trees in the back. I didn't go with the pond. But what the neighbor said is when they dug these ponds, and they're 30 to 40 feet deep, they took all that dirt, and that's what they built the house on. So I had some of the hardest dirt. A neighbor of mine got a trench digger trying to bury his drain tile. It just bounced on the top. And I was told by one of the construction workers, he literally saw a utility guy break down in tears trying to bury lines. So I buried my 100 feet of drain tile, and it was a great workout. But, and they don't sod anything. It's all seeded. So this is my lawn on the bottom, 2 weeks after seeding. My neighbor, who got seeded about a week or two before me, we both watered constantly. The only difference is the microbes. I was mowing after 2 weeks. So I can tell you that's not doctored. This is a guy in Alabama, same kind of thing. He has a pasture. He wanted to reseed it with fescue. Part of it, he just put down the seed. The other part at the bottom, he put down the seed and the microbes. Look at the establishment. Because, again, they induce rooting, and what do roots do? They help the plant survive and thrive. This is a farmer in central Iowa. The difference in the roots. And I've got a picture of his corn yields are phenomenal. So these are too many words, so I'm not going to really talk about this. So faster establishment. Now I want to talk about fertilizer efficiency and why soil organic matter is so important. So if we think about soil organic matter, there's 3 different types. The living, the dead, and the very dead. So I like that. The living is easy. Living roots, living earthworms, living microbes. Those are the components that build the soil, that get the nutrients out of the dead. The dead is the organic matter, the dead roots, the dead microbes, which are really important. I'll show you in a minute. Your compost, whatever you're spreading, the grass clippings, the organic matter that can be easily broken down to release the nutrients. And then the very dead is the stuff that just doesn't break down anymore, like the humic acid. And that's what gives us cation exchange capacity, which gives us water holding capacity. So all 3 of these components are really, really important. And again, there's a lot of science where 2/3 of the soil organic matter under the surface comes from roots. Only 1/3 comes from the stuff we lay on top. So again, the roots are really important to healthy soil. And again, lots of words here, but this is a new study. So sometimes you might read a news article about some discovery in medicine where they did a meta-study. In the meta-study, all it is the scientist is looking at all the published studies about a particular topic. This is 230 published studies looking at how fertilizer is used in grains, which are, by the way, just grass. They're just different species of grasses. And what they found is, to the shock of a lot of my customers, that only about 36 to 40% of the fertilizer they're putting down actually contributes to the plant's nitrogen needs that year. So where does the rest of it come from? Well, this is what scientists do again, soil organic matter. What is the main component of soil organic matter? Microbes. It's because microbes take the nitrogen and make it into protein. And that's organic. And the protein is amino acids, and the plant root can take that up. So the microbes are so important to fertilizer efficiency. And just south of here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, is the Noble Foundation. It came out of the Dust Bowl, in the 1920s, I think it was. They spun off the Soil Health Institute, which I'm a member of. And they're starting to say, finally give the right advice. When you buy a microbial, don't do one or a few strains. It's a biome. You need all of the species because they're designed to work together. So again, where's the proof? We did 28 studies, different soil types, Purdue, NC State, Penn State, looking at turf performance with different forms of fast and slow release nitrogen, just looking at the amount of reduction that you can do in turf when you have the microbes present. And this is pretty extreme. So you can definitely cut nitrogen when you have the microbes, because it's not that the plant needs less. The plant needs every drop used to feed it. It's because less gets wasted. The microbes are feeding more of it to the plant, so you get more bang for your buck. The same is true with phosphorus and potassium. I'm not going to go through the details, but if you look at the top 6 inches of soil, there are decades or hundreds of years, in the case of potassium, of nutrients there, but they're in a chemical form that plant root is never going to touch. But the microbes can, and so they will feed it. So we don't need to keep dumping lots of P and K. And actually the founder of Holganix had a spray company in the Chesapeake Bay area. He had 100 spray trucks treating lawns. They passed bans on phosphorus. Solubilizing bacteria and fungi secreting organic acids. I don't know what his problem is. Doesn't everybody know that? But that's what happens. And again, proof. Do microbes help with nutrient uptake? Well, here's corn, there's control. The guy put 180 pounds an acre of nitrogen, and then he used 0,60,60 for his P and K. VRD is volcanic rock dust. They're just micronutrients. There's no P and K really. It's the microbes. And then you add the biology in the middle. The nutrition was in the soil for all 3 plant types, but the microbes made more of it go into the plant. So you can see just the difference in the plant response. This is the third baseline of a professional Major League Baseball team. And it's dollar spot, and you guys know it's a fungal disease. It's also a nutrition deficiency. They couldn't spray fungicides on this field. They used the biology, and you can see good microbes fight bad, so you get suppression, but it's also releasing the nutrients that the grass needs. 3-day heal-in. And they're also, again, able to reduce overall levels of pest control. These are trees in Florida. I didn't even know we had this customer. But look at the line between where the microbes and where it's not. It's because, again, better roots, better access to water, better access to nutrition, better soil. That's what microbes will do for you. And I think this is probably my last one. This came from a superintendent in Las Vegas. He had just hosted the PGA professional putting. And if you're in turf, you probably know this better than me, but when you cut a green that short, you really stress the roots. So you're only going to get a ½ inch or an inch because you're constantly stressing them. You get 5-inch roots on a green is unbelievable. But like you said, no thatch, the microbes eat it. Oh, one more picture because it's in Kansas City. So this is a guy we work with. This is his lawn when he moved into the house, and then a few months later, he said, "Look at my rose bushes, they're so much better," so he was excited. So again, I hope that even though I threw a lot at you, when you're thinking of soil biology, go for diversity. You need lots of different bacteria, fungi, protozoa, because that's what's going to build the soil. The roots are so critical to putting that organic matter in the soil. And when you get organic matter in the soil, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck out of your fertilizer. So I'm done, unless you've got questions. And then is it dinner, or tell me, Beth, what you need from me?
Oh, there's a question for you.
You want to answer the question, Beth?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
You indicated due to weather and treatments on lawns and so forth, you're going to potentially impact the longevity of this. So you don't really establish a colony of these microbes over a period of time like you're doing. So, before I finish, I can see the benefit for young trees, recent transplants, but would it be applicable as well to, say, a 20-year-old sugar maple that's quite young?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of the question, how long do microbes survive in the soil? The real answer is nobody knows. It is so variable. So there are companies that I know very well that use techniques called DNA fingerprinting, something a molecular biologist would love. And they can determine all the microbes in the soil. But what they'll do is they change week to week, depending on the weather and throughout the growing season, and even foot to foot. So the noise is so big, I wish I could tell you how long the microbes would survive. Now, they're always in competition with what was there. We know, because we've got ground that have been treated with a product like this for 20 plus years. The organic matter is great. Instead of applying maybe 4 times a year on the turf, it's once, and it's a really low rate because the soil is improved, presumably the microbes as well. Now, for the arborist, I've got an arborist I work with in Alabama, and he's working with a lot of the old boxwoods and I think myrtle trees, and he said the disease control he gets, which I can't advertise, and most microbes can't, because then you need an EPA registration, and the EPA has trouble looking at things like this because they're complex. He sees phenomenal response, so he uses them on all of the trees that he treats. It's not just the young ones. But if you're only going to do it once, I say please at planting, do yourself a favor. But I do more than that. Yes, sir?
How would organics affect your micro and macrofauna? Is that something like worms, everything else that's going on in the soil?
Yes, because we're slowly increasing the organic matter and getting more food in, we actually see the macroflora, like the earthworms, really come up. So the soil is better, so everything that lives in healthy soil gets, as part of that benefit.
You talk about application, is it drenching the root ball and planting? I know contractors in Kansas City who use it as a foliar, they'll just drench entire shrub beds. You speak to the most efficient methods.
So I spend most of my time in agriculture, and I get the same kind of question because guys can knife it into the seed row, or they can put it over the top. And I've got customers, probably 50-50, that are equally as passionate about, no, you have to do it this way. I think the most important thing is to make sure you wet it into the root zone. So that would be number one. In terms of the foliar benefits, And, I do see that you get some benefit there. But again, most important, even, I love that the granules, the composted chicken litter with the microbes are easy to use, because that's the main bang for the buck. You're going to get the mycorrhizae down there and that burst of roots. So I come back and say, put it down in the way that's easiest for your operation, and you're going to be okay. And Tori, I hope I didn't just say something wrong.
No, I mean, so we actually, all the stuff we plant in the field, we spray this product amongst several others. We got a liquid fish product we use, different microbes. There's a specific liquid calcium that we'll use at planting. And then every time we spray herbicide, we reapply the Holganix every time, right? So we're consistently reapplying in our production. Same thing when we do a insecticide as a drench. We like our people, believe it or not, so we try really hard to do as much drenching as we can with systemics as opposed to nervous system disruptors on the foliage. So unlike Dory, you don't install these. You guys spray each other though. But yeah, I mean the reapplication, and I like actually mixing other products with it a lot, especially the fish product, because you can increase your population of a lot of these things by spiking it just a little bit. I know I've talked to Barrett about that. It's like, hey, be careful, you can screw it up too. So maybe I shouldn't have said anything there.
No, I love it mixed with the fish emulsion. I think that's fantastic.
We prefer a fish hydrostate, which is full pressed and brewed as opposed to boiled. But we have access. We actually have developed a system for landscape contractors where we have recommended rates for the products and measuring cups and how-to videos and everything. So
Where do we find that?
we call it rehab. Yeah. Just in all transparency, so we label, so we buy their product in bulk and we bottle it, and we call it PlantRight, Bio 300. Right? So, I've been, like I said, I've been using this product quite a while, and it's definitely the cornerstone of our program. But if you could talk to the main. There's nothing that's a magic potion, right? There is no magic. To me, you gotta have air, you gotta have water, you gotta have carbon, you gotta have your base nutrition. These are the simple, the basic principles when you have to grow plants, right? If you don't have air, you're in trouble.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, just like the plant root, the microbes that are beneficial have to have air in all the fungi. So if you want the mycorrhizae in particular, you have to have air. Another thing about a product like this, you can spray it, and your client, her kids and her dog can be right behind you. I mean, there's no re-entry restriction, nothing that's hazardous. You can even spray it on the edible portion of a plant, because we have government review on that, and not have to heat treat it or anything. So it's safe.
It will not regrow hair though.
I wish it would.
The only other thing that I would say on the application ways is that it varies depending on what you're trying to do. So for instance, a veterinary, right? We have veterinarians that use it in drug breaks, that they'll use it literally once a week as a bulk of their application, because they're compounding a specific fungus disease, right? And then there are other places that they're only going to do, they'll make one application a year versus one every week. For instance, in ag, right? So they're growing corn and soybeans, they'll do one application at planting and furrow, right? So I mean, it varies. Cannabis customers, not that anybody in here knows about that, I'm sure, but the cannabis growers, right? They'll put, I have a guy who puts on 3 ounces in each 100-gallon pot every single day. Right, so I mean, it varies depending on exactly what you're doing, what the application is, what exactly you're trying to do.
How's it make a weed act?
Well, unfortunately, weeds also need. But as long as you've got the weed control, then hopefully you can count them out. Did you have a question, sir?
I did have a question, it's more of a farming question. I remember from the farm that every 2 or 3 years after growing corn, we would have to put in alfalfa or soybeans. Apparently that re-energizes nitrogen, and I'm curious if you could explain that process and to the extent that it substitutes for or replaces or overlaps with what you're talking about here with this product.
Okay, so I wish corn growers would rotate their crops, because right now we've got a lot of corn on corn on corn, and that's probably worse for diseases and nematodes. But it is also true that planting a legume, like a grass, something that can break up not only the diseases, but also get roots deeper into the ground. It's just so good for soil health. Plus, plant varieties, because a species of a plant can have different hybrids or different varieties within it. They actually attract different microbes. So it's amazing the complexity. So having variety is actually good for the soil too. So you want that. You don't want the monoculture if you have a choice. I'm not going to tear my grass up and plant it in clover, but
Right.
yeah.
But the legumes, do they replenish nitrogen?
They do. So legumes have bacteria that live in the roots that can take nitrogen from the air, and they form nodules. You can actually see them on the roots. So they can add nitrogen to the soil.
It's interesting, at our farm, we have gone to mostly in our fields, different clovers. We do grow some grass, but to try to get as much diversity of species grown in the field, we've added a number of different clovers.
Is clover a legume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually good to fix up to 100 pounds to the acre of nitrogen with clover.